Hello guys, how are you doing? This is Rob of Ro2R Review. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're talking about all of these SNES games that are apparently coming to the Nintendo Switch. So yes, we are talking about Super Nintendo games possibly being brought to the Nintendo Switch's online service, maybe sometime kind of soon, possibly in a Nintendo Direct that might air in January, which of course we're all still waiting for, you know. Again, a Nintendo Direct was never confirmed, there were only slight rumors, and for the most part everyone was just kind of assuming, and that includes myself, that a Nintendo Direct was going to happen this month. It didn't happen a couple of days ago on January 10th, like most people were predicting, so now we're kind of still waiting. And so if a Nintendo Direct happened this month, or even if we get a Nintendo Direct in the next 2 or 3 months, could we see Super Nintendo games announced for the online service? Now, the reason this conversation has started up the last couple of days, I'm sure most of you guys already probably know this by the time you're watching my take on this, is because there was a hacker or a data miner who managed to apparently notice within some of the code for the Nintendo Switch and the online service that some Super Nintendo games seem to be listed within that code. And now this isn't 100% verified, and this isn't 100% confirmed. And again, Nintendo hasn't announced anything. So whether this data mining is accurate, whether it's inaccurate, no matter what, until Nintendo says anything, this could all be a bunch of smoke and mirrors and it might mean nothing. But, you know me, I like talking about this stuff. It's interesting, and it makes me wonder how a solid Super Nintendo library of games could potentially add value to or even save Nintendo's online service. Now, the person in question who apparently located all of these Super Nintendo games is known as Cappuccino Heck on Twitter. And he or she actually made a post on Twitter listing out all of the games that they apparently noticed seem to be included somewhere within the code of the Switch and the online service. So let's just quickly go over everything that they posted on Twitter as far as what games are supposed to be there. Super Mario Kart, Super Soccer, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, Demon's Crest, a new game, Yoshi's Island, Stunt Race FX, good game, Kirby's Dream Course, Poppin' Twinbee, I have no idea what that is, Star Fox, Contra 3, Kirby Superstar, Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Kirby's Dream Land 3, Super Metroid, Super Mario World, Pilot Wings, F-Zero, Star Fox 2, Super Punch-Out, The Legend of Mystical Ninja, Super Mario Bros., and Breath of Fire 2. So, a pretty expansive list of games, and definitely an interesting list, and definitely also an exciting list. Now, I know that one of the first things a lot of us think about when we look at that list of games and when we consider a library of SNES games coming to the Nintendo Switch is the Super Nintendo Classic, which of course launched last year, was a huge success, is a huge deal. I've got this one sitting on my desk here, so you know that I own one, and I think it's a fantastic product. And when you look at the breadth of games available on that, and then of course the games listed here, you notice that not only are all of the games really, really good, but they're also, most of them also on the Super Nintendo Classic. There are some extra ones like Demon's Crest, like I said, the Stunt Race FX, those are games not included on the Super Nintendo Classic. But, you know, hey, they're all great games. Let's be real. The Super Nintendo, one of the greatest consoles of all time, one of the greatest console libraries of all time. There are so many classic, memorable, legendary games on that console. It's part of why I think the 16-bit era was just the absolute best. I miss it so much, and I love reminiscing about it, which is why the SNES Classic is amazing, and the Genesis Collection, which I picked up on the Switch, is also fantastic. I love reliving these games. And so, you know, we start to draw comparisons between these, you know, rumored games coming to the Super Nintendo or the Nintendo Switch Online, I should say, sorry. And then also the games on the SNES Classic. And so I think that when we start to wonder if Nintendo would or wouldn't do that, we start to think, well, if, you know, 80 to 90% of those games are already on the Super Nintendo Classic, does that mean that this is probably just not true? Because why would Nintendo release the same games on the Switch when they're already on an $80 SNES Classic? Maybe, maybe not. Now, I think the other and more important angle to discuss with this whole rumor and just this whole concept of SNES games coming to the Switch's online service is kind of like I already stated here. Is this something that could help save their online service in people's eyes, in the consumer's eyes and the gamer's eyes? Because, you know, since the online service really started to get some details, and then the pricing, and then it actually launched, and we've understood, you know, the things that it does, and all of the things that it doesn't do, a lot of people have had major issue with the service. And now, you know, I've had to share my opinion on the online service a few times, but a reminder in case anyone, you know, stumbles upon this channel for this video who doesn't already know me, I am somebody who doesn't really care that the Switch's online service really isn't all that good. To me, it's very reasonably priced. $20 a year, just for me, is basically almost nothing. And it's incredibly cheap compared to its direct competition. And the number one thing I've only ever cared about with an online service, and this applies to Sony and Microsoft as well, who I also pay for, the only thing I care about is just access to play my games online. Everything else, as far as downloading or purchasing games, you can do without paying for an online service on all 3 consoles. Sony and Microsoft are charging $60 a year, and I don't really use anything on those services either. So for just for me, paying $20 for Nintendo's online service for the same thing, only at a third of the price, is totally fine. However, what I can also say and acknowledge and admit is, by comparison, regardless of price, by comparison, the Switch's online service definitely is antiquated. It's a little bit archaic. It's not doing a lot of things up to par compared to Sony or Microsoft, even though, yes, they're charging more. To be fair, the things that their services offer are definitely better than what Nintendo's offering. And so that's where we get into the idea of the overall public perception of the Switch's online definitely needs some help. People don't like it, they don't think well of it, they don't speak well of it, and so it kind of has like a stank attached to it, if you will. You know, it's like a black mark on the Switch's record or on Nintendo as a business right now. Something they're not doing well that people aren't in love with. And some people are even extremely mad about it. And a lot of people are still they're still deciding to not sign up for or pay for the Switch's online service. And so, as far as Nintendo's concerned as a business, that's a lot of money left on the table. That's a lot of consumers and gamers not buying into what they're offering, and so that's a lot of revenue that Nintendo could otherwise be gaining. And so when we look at the idea of SNES games coming over to the service, because as we all know, there's 23, 24 Nintendo games, NES games available right now in the service, which is certainly cool. And they're always adding 2 or 3 more per month, and so that's also neat that they're adding some games to it. But for a lot of people, that's obviously not enough. Super Nintendo games, though, might actually be enough to improve the overall value, the perception of the value to a lot of people of the online service, and really convince, I think, a significant amount of people who've yet to buy into the online service to actually decide to do so. I mean, to me, the real crux of the issue, just when we look at the available games you get alongside of the online service for paying for it, you know, monthly or yearly, is the fact that while NES games are great, and I think the Nintendo Entertainment System is like one of the greatest consoles ever, probably the most important console ever made, you know, as great as those games are, they're not necessarily the best in 2018, 2019, going into 2020 next year. You know, they don't really sell the value of a service, I think, the same way, because as amazing as they are, they don't age necessarily the best. They're still playable and fun today, but they're not really timeless, I wouldn't say. However, I think 16-bit era games are almost timeless, and those are much more playable today. And SNES and Sega Genesis games are games and experiences that gamers still want to play today. Not only the old farts like me who grew up playing them when they were brand new, but I think even some of the younger generation gamers, the gamers who are 20 years old and younger, I think are also still interested in playing these games that released before they were born and that they didn't get to experience. But when they go back and play some of the best games from the 16-bit generation, I think that they see that they're still good and still fun. And I would have to think, for a lot of you younger, you know, guys out there, let me know if this is right or wrong. When you play a game like A Link to the Past or Super Metroid or these old Contra games, stuff like that, that you can maybe see and appreciate the roots of gaming that led to a lot of the games that we're playing nowadays, you know? And I don't really know that 8-bit games really get that message across as much as 16-bit games and SNES games. And so I think that's why a lot of people want to see games of this caliber and quality and higher start to come to the online service. And I think that if Nintendo ends up confirming, yeah, hey, we're bringing SNES games and adding it to the online service too for no additional money, it's still $20 a year, and you've got all the NES games that we've released, and then also this upcoming library of Super Nintendo games, I think people would get excited, and the people who've been holding off, at least a lot of them, not all, but a lot, would probably decide, okay, It's time for me to pay for this online service, man. Let's do it. Obviously, there's still another hurdle, though, when we look at this, and it, again, is the SNES Classic and the fact that a lot of people have that, and so a lot of people might also see a library of SNES games coming, and if it's this exact list, or if it's even something similar to this, and a lot of the games coming to the online service are also on the SNES Classic out of the gate, that might also deter some people. I could see somebody saying, I mean, I already bought an SNES Classic, and now you're bringing, you know, 20 of those games over to the online service for the Switch. I don't care about that. I already have them, so no, I'm still not going to pay for the online service, Nintendo. You need to give me more before I'm willing to buy in. That's a real problem Nintendo runs into if they bank entirely on these rumored SNES games coming to the online service, because it might not convince everybody. I think, though, at the end of the day, if we just look aside from that one pretty real hurdle, I think that the overall picture tells us that at the end of the day, yeah, people I think would be willing to sign up for the online service if they added the SNES games. And so, would they save the online service? No, I don't think it would save the online service. Would it improve the value, improve the quality, and convince some naysayers to now pony up the dough to sign up for it? Yes, it would. And so I think that that is definitely a good thing. I don't really think that the online service for the Switch, to tell you the truth, guys, will be saved until they fix the voice chat system and fix the messaging system. You know, I think that's the biggest hurdle, using that phone app, not being able to use a very simple and system-level voice chat and messaging system. That is, I think, the #1 thing. We can complain about the lack of Virtual Console, we can complain about cloud saves not working on everything, complain about the price, yada yada yada, all that stuff. And those are real problems Nintendo should also fix. But I think the #1 thing that would convince all of the haters to actually say, okay, it's finally a good service and it's finally worth 20 bucks a year, would be fixing voice chat and messaging. If Nintendo does that, I think most people will feel happy. But if this rumor comes true, if this list of games is accurate, and these games and others like it are coming to the SNES I keep saying the SNES Online, the Switch Online, then I do think it's going to go a long way to fixing the quality of the service, and I think that it's going to be the first step into sort of healing the fan base that is broken and angry about the kind of lack of quality of Nintendo Switch's Online. So that's my opinion. That's what's going on. Again, this isn't official. It's a rumor. It's a leak. It could be nothing. It could be somebody just on Reddit forums and wherever the place on the internet just putting out random stuff because it's going to get traction. And so people like me, totally guilty here, decide to talk about it. So I guess we'll just wait and see. I personally think that eventually SNES games or some kind of Virtual Console will come to the Switch. Whether it's this rumor or not, I can't say, but eventually I just think it's going to happen. Nintendo would be stupid not to do it. So that's my take. That's what I think about the SNES games rumor and how it could save or not save Nintendo's online service. Tell me what you guys think. Please discuss what you feel about the SNES games. And that is going to be it for me. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Ro2R, and I'll catch you next time on another video.